Magandang umaga, Malacañang Press Corps, and welcome sa ating press briefing ngayong araw, August the 1st. President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. received the National Expenditure Program for fiscal year 2025 presented by the Department of Budget and Management yesterday. President Marcos mentioned in his recent State of the Nation address that this proposed government budget was created with utmost care, diligence, and meticulous attention. The 2025 NEP amounting to 6.352 trillion pesos is a 10.1% increase from this year's 5.758 trillion budget. It aims to prioritize food security, social protection, housing, infrastructure, healthcare, disaster resilience, digital connectivity, and energization. It also aligns with the key priorities of the Philippine Development Plan for 2023 to 2028, focusing on three pillars. These are developing and protecting the capabilities of individuals and families, transforming production sectors to generate more quality jobs and competitive products, and lastly, creating an enabling environment. The President also said in his SONA, we look to the cooperation of our colleagues in the legislature, not only that our proposed national budget will be approved in your usual timely manner, but it will be adhered to as closely as possible. And to get an overview of the proposed budget, we ask you to please watch this video.
The Philippines, a frontrunner and key player among Asia's emerging economies, outpacing Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and China in the first quarter of 2024. We remain on track with our agenda for prosperity, with the International Monetary Fund forecasting growth at 6% for 2024. Building on our gains, we strive to fulfill the needs and aspirations of the Filipino people. Equivalent to 22.1% of GDP, the proposed national budget for fiscal year 2025 is 6.352 trillion pesos. Meticulously crafted and anchored on the Philippine Development Plan 2023 to 2028, the budget aims to develop and protect the capabilities of individuals and families, transform production sectors to generate more quality jobs and produce competitive products, foster an enabling environment that will promote macroeconomic stability and improve public services. To reduce the medical expenses of the poor, we will allocate 74.4 billion pesos to subsidize the health insurance premiums of indirect contributors under PhilHealth. We will provide medical assistance to millions of financially incapacitated patients and construct more accessible health facilities, including the Bagong Urgent Care and Ambulatory Service or Bukas centers. We are investing heavily in education with 977.6 billion pesos or 15.4% of the proposed budget. We have built almost 3,000 classrooms in 2023 and will construct 6,000 more in 2025 with 29.3 billion pesos for the Basic Education Facilities Program. We will bridge the digital divide through more than 18,000 e-classroom packages and almost 100 million textbooks and other instructional materials for all public schools. For our teachers, the Kabalikat sa Pagtuturo Act will double the teaching allowance from 5,000 pesos to 10,000 pesos. And for our students, the Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education Program, which will provide scholarships to millions, will receive 53.1 billion pesos.
Isa ang CHED sa mga naging daan upang makapagtapos po ako ng pag-aaral. I was so blessed dahil sa CHED, my father did not have to think about my tuition and miscellaneous fees.
To reduce the vulnerabilities of our people, we are transforming the country's social protection system. The Pambansang Pabahay para sa Pilipino program will provide decent and affordable housing with 1.8 billion pesos. while the implementation of the Centenarian Act will be expanded with 3 billion pesos to provide cash benefits to senior citizens above 80 years old.
Whatever current data proudly bannering our country as among the best performing in Asia means nothing to a Filipino who is confronted by the price of rice at 45 to 65 pesos per kilo.
The Pantawid Pamilyang Pilipino program will receive a higher allocation of 114.2 billion pesos for education and health grants and rice subsidies to no less than 4.4 million households.
Nung dumating po ang Pantawid sa amin, malaking tulong po, nakakabili na po ako ng gamit ng mga anak ko sa school, lalong-lalo na po yung gamot po ng anak ko. Ang rice po malaking bagay din po sa Tagalog at saka sa katutubo.
We will provide additional grants for pregnant and lactating mothers to ensure the health and nutrition of children for their first 1,000 days. We will also give cash-based assistance through the food stamp program. To strengthen food security and address inflation, we are boosting local production with an increased allocation of 31.4 billion pesos for the National Rice Program. And we will construct an additional 1,541 kilometers of farm-to-market roads and introduce solar-powered fertigation systems to boost high-value crop farming. To generate not only decent but competitive jobs, we will harmonize our livelihood and employment programs with 36.8 billion pesos. We will intensify our technical and vocational education and training through TESDA with 18.7 billion pesos.
Maraming salamat po talaga sa TESDA. Sana po lahat po ng mga nag-aalangan na hanapin yung gusto nilang gawin sa buhay, meron pong TESDA na kaagapay ninyo.
The Tulong Panghanap Buhay sa Ating Disadvantaged Workers or TUPAD program provided jobs to over 3 million displaced workers in 2023 and will continue to support millions more in 2025.
Nagpapasalamat kami dako nga naapilmi di aning programa sa Dole Tupad. Kay dako og kayo ning nga nakatabang sa among pangadlaw-adlaw nga panginabuhi.
We will create even more jobs through the MSME Development Program, the Shared Service Facilities Project, and Negosyo Centers. And to further revitalize industries, we will continue to implement the Green Lane for strategic investments. To drive innovation, we will increase the allocation for research and development to 23.2 billion pesos. We have also launched our Malacañang Pinoy program and will continue to support our creative industries. To sustain the momentum of the tourism industry, we will promote the Philippine Experience Program and local food tourism. The halal food industry will also get a boost of 286.4%. To combat graft and corruption, we are allocating 70.6 billion pesos to rapidly digitalize our bureaucracy. This covers the advancement of our public financial management program with 575 million pesos, while 3.1 billion pesos will be invested to digitalize revenue collection.
With our online registration update system or yung ORUS na tinatawag natin, napapadali nito ang pag-update at pag-transact sa BIR at the comforts of the taxpayers' home.
To further improve bureaucratic efficiency, we allotted 70 billion pesos for the increase in salaries and 9.6 billion pesos for additional healthcare benefits of government employees. To ensure transparent, digitalized, and reliable midterm elections, 15 billion pesos will be allocated for automated national and local election activities, including the additional honoraria of poll watchers. The barangay and sangguniang kabataan elections will also be supported with 11.6 billion pesos. To secure the country's territorial integrity, we will strengthen our land, air, and naval forces defense programs with a revised AFP modernization program budget increasing to 50 billion pesos to address recent developments in the West Philippine Sea. To further propel economic growth, we have allocated 5.7% of GDP or 1.51 trillion pesos for the Build Better More infrastructure program. We will build better and build more with 900 billion pesos allocated for the Department of Public Works and Highways. Meanwhile, the budget of the Department of Transportation will increase to 180.9 billion pesos to support the completion of central railway systems, subways and busways, maritime, and other public transport projects. And we will continue to build world-class air transportation systems through the Aviation Infrastructure Program.
As of May this year, 12,000 kilometers worth of roads and more than 1,200 bridges have been built and upgraded across the country.
To accelerate climate action, our climate change expenditures more than doubled to 1 trillion pesos. We have harmonized government efforts to improve every Filipino's access to clean and potable water with 309.7 billion pesos. To accelerate access to water supply and sanitation services of lagging municipalities, 1 billion pesos is allotted to the Support and Assistance Fund to Participatory Budgeting. This covers the construction of climate-smart evacuation centers. The Green 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 program, which will support local government units in building open spaces and infrastructure for active mobility, will receive 1 billion pesos. And to enhance disaster resilience, we will provide 417.9 billion pesos for the government's Risk Resiliency Program. The Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao will be supported with 94.4 billion pesos. To strengthen fiscal decentralization, LGUs will receive a share of 1 trillion pesos from the national tax allotment, higher by 18.7%. Indeed, we are ushering in a new era where local governments are the shining beacons of sustainable and inclusive development.
We look to the cooperation of our colleagues in the legislature, not only that our proposed national budget be approved in your usual timely manner, but it be adhered to as closely as possible.
Our proposed national budget reflects our unwavering commitment to promoting the sound, efficient, and effective management and utilization of government resources. Sa pamamagitan ng budget na ito, ipagpapatuloy po natin ang ating nasimulan upang lalo pa nating maialay ang ating taus-pusong serbisyo sa ating mga kababayan sa ilalim ng bagong Pilipinas. Pagsikapan natin na paigtingin at palaguin palalo ang ating ekonomiya upang ating mabigyang daan ang kaunlaran at ang mga pangarap ng ating mga kababayan.
Thank you. At para bigyan pa tayo ng detalye sa National Expenditure Program sa susunod na taon, kasama natin ngayon sina DBM Secretary Amenah Pangandaman, Undersecretaries Janet Abuel, Rolando, Toledo, Principal Economist Joselito, Basilio, at Assistant Secretary Mary Ann Dela, Vega. Magandang umaga, Secretary Pangandaman.
Good morning, Miss Daphne, and good morning to our media friends. Okay, let's start with the question and answer.
Go ahead. Okay, we start with Jinky Baticados, IBC.
Hi, ma'am. Good afternoon na po. Ma'am, government agencies had wanted a little over 9 trillion po in funding for their programs next year. But DBM only approved 69% of the request. Anong rationale natin dito, ma'am?
First of all, we're following a fiscal consolidation, fiscal program, no? From now, when the administration started, hanggang matapos po tayo. So, ang ibig sabihin po nun, generally, we are trying to decrease our deficit and at the same time maximize po whatever revenue that we have. So with that po, based on the DBCC po kasi ang nag-aayos ng mga levels, and we came up with a 6.352 trillion level for next year. So paano po namin nagawa yon na out of 9.2 trillion pesos, naging 6.3 lang? First, we look at the absorptive capacity of all the departments and agencies. Kung kaya po nila ma-implement yung mga proyekto. Pangalawa, we also check the numbers, yung utilization nila for the past 2 to 3 years. Next, we check also the preparedness of their programs and projects. We would like to ensure that pag pumasok po yung programa mo, whether infrastructure or service yung nature ng program mo, kaya po i-implement kaagad-agad, shovel-ready yung mga projects. Next, it should adhere to the Philippine Development Plan. Kung nakita nyo po kanina, merong 3 pillars tayo na sinusunod, yung nilaunch natin na Philippine Development. And then, there are also existing program convergence na ginagawa po between the Department of Budget and Management, NEDA, and the other implementing agencies. For infrastructure, there is also a mechanism where we use together with NEDA, yung tinatawag po na Public Investment program and the 3-year infrastructure program. Again, related dun po yun because we want to see whether an infrastructure project is readily implementable.
Ma'am, one last po. In terms of the controversial confidential and intelligence funds, Secretary, same agencies from the 2024 GAA po will get the confidential fund for next year. And do we have exact data on how much confidential funds may be included in the next year budget?
Yes. So our total confidential and intel funds for next year, for 2025, bumaba po siya ng 16%. It is from 12.378 billion pesos noong 2024 sa GAA. And then now, yung proposal po namin, it's only 10,286,000,091. Yun po. So, yung mga agencies na naka-receive po are as follows. Siguro babanggitin ko na lang po yung mga malalaking ahensya. Department of Interior and Local Government, naka-receive po ng 906.6 million pesos. It's between the Office of the Secretary and the Philippine National Police. Department of Justice with 579.4 million pesos, divided among the Office of the Secretary, Bureau of Immigration, National Bureau of Investigation, Office of the Solicitor General. We also have the Office of the President with 4.5 billion pesos. Department of Defense, 1.8 billion pesos. Of which 147 million sa Office of the Secretary, and then ang Armed Forces of the Philippines po is 1.7 billion pesos. Meron din po ang DSWD but very little amount, 18 million pesos. Department of Transportation, 405 million pesos. Other executive offices, 1.8 billion pesos. Kasama po dyan ang Anti-Money Laundering Council with 7.5 million pesos. Games and Amusement Board with 4 million. National Intelligence Coordinating Agency with 991.2 million pesos. National Security Council with 250 million pesos. OPAPRO po, 60 million. And Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency with 500 million pesos. Yung mga ibang opisina po, maliliit lang po, the likes of Commission on Audit, Office of the Ombudsman, and then Commission of Human Rights.
Okay.
Thank
Alan
you.
Francisco, PTV4.
Hi, Sec. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Yeah. Education Secretary or Education's budget is a top priority. Ma'am, in his interview, DepEd Secretary Sani Angara said he would study the proposal to increase the entry-level salary of public school teachers. Kasama na po ba ito sa budget, ma'am?
Wala pa po, hindi pa po hindi pa po to nakakasama dahil nung nag-assume po sa posisyon si Senator Sani Angara, tapos na po yung budget na i-present na po namin kay Presidente po at sa Cabinet. But we gave him the opportunity to at least rearrange the priority programs within the level that was approved during the Cabinet meeting. Yung increase po ng entry level, I think it needs a legislation po. However, yung increase po ng salary, yun po ang nakasama na po dito sa 2025 NEP. Naglagay po tayo ng 70 billion pesos for the increase of salaries ng government employees po. Of course, kasama po sila, ang ating mga teachers. But the entry level, hindi pa po kasama. I think pag-aaralan pa po nila. And legislation po yung kailangan natin doon.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, Raquel Bayan, Radyo Pilipinas. This side.
Good afternoon, Secretary. Last saw na po ni Pangulong Marcos, he mentioned yung joint forces ng different agencies po to boost yung potential and employability ng ating mga mag-aaral and youth. For under 2025 budget po, how much did we allot para po doon sa mga programs na may kinalaman sa employment ng ating mga kabataan po?
For fiscal year 2025 National Expenditure Program, ang youth employability programs under the Department of Labor and Employment ay nabigyan po ng 984.2 million pesos para po sa implementation ng following projects. First, Special Program for Employment of Students, yung SPES po, with 828.9 million pesos. At yung tinatawag po nating Job Start Program, JSP, with 155.2 million pesos. Nagkaroon po ito ng substantial na increase of 84% from last year's budget dahil ito po, may 449 po ang naging increase dito.
Ma'am, how about yung unprogram appropriations po natin under 6.3 trillion 2025 NEP? And kung mas mataas po ba siya this year 2024 budget?
Ang total and program po natin for NEP next year is 158.6 billion pesos. It posted a significant decrease of 572 billion or 78.31% from the 731 allocation for this year po. So meaning yung total na program appropriation natin for next year is only 2.5% of the 6.352 trillion proposed budget.
Ma'am, may we know bakit po kaya nagkaroon ng pagbaba sa program natin for this year, for next year?
We tried to program all the pinasok po natin sa program level natin lahat ng mga proyekto at programa ng ating mga departments and agencies. Generally po, at least for me po, nung pumasok po ako sa DBM, sila po yung mga mentor ko doon. Ang alam ko po, ang pagkakaintindi ko po kasi nung unprogram appropriation, which we follow year in, year out, is that ang pinapasok po talaga namin dito, ang unprogram po kasi talagang standby fund eh. At majority po na nilalagay namin dito are foreign assisted projects po na hindi pa na-approve ng ICC board at saka NEDA board. Now, when we release the budget circular po, may deadline po kami doon na by March 31, kung ano lang yung mga na-approve ng NEDA board, yun lang po yung ipapasok namin sa programa. And then all the rest, ilalagay namin sa unprogram appropriations. Ito po yung mga foreign assisted na nakikita namin na ma-approve naman within the year. So, kailangan din po natin lagyan ng standby fund for the GOP counterpart.
And, ma'am,
And the loan proceeds. Yeah.
Lastly
Because we
na-
haven't received the loan proceeds yet. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Lastly na lang po from my end, may we get an update po sa 2024 budget utilization natin? Meron po ba tayong mga departments na nag-underspend?
Gusto mo si Yusek Jojit na lang sasagot. Sanay na siya.
According dun sa ating latest data, sige ito. Ang actual spending sa first semester ng 2024 ay higit sa itinakda ng DBCC. For example, meron kasing disbursement program eh. So that's yung releases have been around 24.6 billion higher than program. So that means may mga na-accelerate tayong mga programa and projects na siyang nasimulan ng mas maaga ngayong taong ito. So overall, for as of the second quarter or first semester or end June, initial data collected from agencies, around 14% higher na ang spending natin this year compared with last year. So ano yung mga major reasons dito? So for example, DPWH has its road network infrastructure program. Mas naging mabilis sila this first semester. Ang isa sa mga reason ay nagkakandak sila ng early procurement activities. Meaning, bago pa magsimula yung January 1, nakakapag-bid out na sila ng kanilang mga road infrastructure projects even before the year began. So that pag-release ng budget by January 1, simula na agad yung pagpapa-implement ng proyekto. DND, Department of National Defense, had a bigger spending for its modernization program. Yung sa 4Ps ng DSWD, mas maganda yung naging proseso at ngayon mas may malinis na silang sistema at listahan ng beneficiaryo compared with last year. Kaya yung releases nila for 4Ps have been faster for this year compared with last year. COMELEC have also started its spending activities in preparation for the local and national elections for next year. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Raquel. Let's move on to Alexis Romero, Philippine Star.
Secretary, the President has been mentioning the need to continue engagements here and abroad, no, in order to attain the economic goals of the Philippines and to sell it as an investment in destination. So may we now have details of the travel expenses, travel budget of the President, and how do we compare it from last year's?
All right. Meron pong for next year sa NEP 1,054,000,000 is the meaning 1,540,000,000. Tama no? 1,000 ang budget po ng Office of the President 1.054. Okay. 054. Okay. Billion ang proposed allocation for travel expenses under the Office of the President. It is 94 million or 8%. It's a 94 million or 8% decrease compared to 1.148 billion allocation in the 2024 General Appropriations Act. Bumaba po siya ng 8%, 0.8%.
To what do
8% pala.
To what do we attribute the lower budget for travels?
Siguro, kung makikita po natin dito sa proposal nila, siguro may mga nabawasan po silang mga travel, both local and foreign.
So we expect a lower number of travels for the coming year for the part of the President.
I guess because of the lower budget. Yeah.
Kasi medyo nako-confuse lang ako, Secretary, kasi yung previous reports, there was a mention of a 1.4 billion travel budget kung titignan natin yung mga previous reports last year na 2024 budget.
2024 po is 1.1 billion ang actual.
Kasi sa background check, it's 1.4. So,
One
apparently
point-
napalitan.
Actually, it's 1.14.
Okay. So, less travel. So,
Oo.
but we can assure the public that despite yung less travels, ma-attain pa rin yung objective na magkaroon ng engagements,
Yes.
yung selling of the Philippines as an investment destination.
Yes po, definitely. Parang na-explain ko naman po dati, together also with DTI and kami rin po sa economic team, we still continue to go out and parang kumbaga we market the Philippines as an investment destination. Tuloy-tuloy po yan. Samantalang yung iba po, may mga napirmahan na po ng mga memorandum of understanding and agreement ng ating presidente. Kailangan pa rin po, meron din pa pong follow-ups itong mga ito para to ensure na makarating nga itong mga investments na kalap natin noong mga nakaraang taon.
Salamat po.
Thank you. Tuesday New, DZBB.
Good morning, ma'am. Ma'am, yung nabanggit po nyo kanina na 70 billion additional salary increase para sa government workers, ito na po ba yung sinasabi ni Presidente na in 4 tranches gagawin? And how will we do that? Kailangan mag-submit pa tayo ng another salary in the standardization law po ba? Ganun po ba yung?
Yung 70 billion po para sa adjustment na yan ng first tranche at saka second tranche for next year. Kasi gusto po natin simulan na this year yung first tranche ng ating salary increase. So it's 2024. Usually po kasi 4 years yan eh. 2024, 2025, 2026, and 2027. So yan po yung, of course yung 2026 level, wala pa po dun sa budget natin nung 2025. So yun po, 4 tranches hanggang 2027. And as of now po, we are perfecting the executive order po and we are hoping po for the issuance of the executive order soon po.
Alright. Yung nabanggit din po ni Presidente sa zona niya yung medical benefits or allowance ng government workers. This year po ba ay implement na po yun and how much po?
Next year po natin siya i-implement na nag-allocate po tayo ng 9.6 billion pesos for next year para po makakuha ang ating mga government employees ng kanilang medical allowance. 7,000 each employee po. Wala po kaming sa executive po nung pumasok po ako, matagal na. Pero galing ako sa Senate. So yung may mga fiscal autonomy, they provide. So pagdating ko po sa executive, napansin ko parang wala pong medical allowance kami or HMO. So hindi po kami nakakapagpa-check up, at least yung blood test and all. Tapos sa ER, wala rin kaming access sa ganon. So we pay for it, or maybe PhilHealth po. But I think this is a nice add to the benefits and allowances na meron po ang mga empleyado.
Ayun.
Annually po yan. It's a cash po kasi medical allowance po yung nature na ginawa natin para parang uniform allowance po para easier po yung acquire ng mga departments po nung kanilang HMO.
Okay. Alvin Baltasar, Radyo Pilipinas.
Secretary, magandang umaga po. Secretary, follow-up ko lang doon sa tanong ni Joselito tungkol doon sa salary increase. Interesado kami, sir. Secretary, kasi ang sabi ni Pangulo, effective this year. So, yung first tranche. So, does this mean na magkakaroon ng retroactive?
Yes po.
From the month of January?
January, yes po.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. He's happy. Okay. Applause. Wow. Okay.
follow-up lang po.
Ivan Mayrina.
Ma'am, one more question, ma'am. Kanina doon sa parang hindi nabanggit yata yung Office of the Vice President. Nagkaroon po ba sila ng increase doon sa budget ng OVP? And kung merong increase, ma'am, magkano po, Secretary?
Sa CIF po, wala pong CIF ang Office of the Vice President. I think hindi rin po siya nag-request. ng CIF. Pero ang total budget po niya for next year sa NEP po is 2.03 billion pesos. 2.037 billion pesos. 188.5 million is allocated for personal services. 1.79 billion for maintenance and other operating expenses and 56 million for capital outlay.
Secretary, mas tumaas ba ito o mas mababa?
Tumaas po siya ng 8%. Oo. 152, yeah.
All right. Next question. Ivan Myrina, GMA 7.
Good noon, Secretary. 6.352 trillion. How much of this is going to be funded by internal revenue and how much of it is going to be funded by borrowings?
Dito na lang. Sa atin pong sa ating pong fiscal program for 2025 as approved by DBCC, revenue would be around 4.6 trillion, and that would include tax collection of 4.3 trillion and breakdown into 3.2 trillion for from the BIR. BOC, first time ever in history na lalagpas na siya sa 1 trillion level. So 1.064 trillion ang program ng customs collections for next year. Other non-tax revenues, 210.8 billion, and then hopefully privatization proceeds 101 billion. So i-minus po natin yan doon sa 6.253, ang magiging deficit natin would be 1.537 trillion pesos. This is around 5.3% of the projected GDP for next year, 2025. Right in line with the medium-term fiscal program as revised by our economic managers.
And where does that put us, sir, in terms of our debt situation? Kasi we are, as of the last report, more than 15 trillion in debt.
Mm-hmm. So, in general, of course, that brings us to our track para yung deficit to GDP ratio natin ay umabot sa fiscal target na 3.7% by 2028. So that means meron tayong pagbabayad ng utang, principal at interest payment a little bit accelerated. Tapos given the interest rate conditions, ang expected natin dahil bumababa na yung inflation, mga central banks around the world and even for the Philippines over the medium term will be more steady and lower from their levels last year or at the beginning of the year. So that means may magpipeak pa ng konti ang ating debt level. Yung sinabi mo na 15, aakyat pa siya to around 17 trillion by end of 2025. But eventually, because of better revenue collections, because higher yung GDP, higher yung base, so higher yung sales, mas tataas din ang tax collection ng gobyerno. Ganun din sa customs. So in the end, bababa na yung tinatawag na debt to GDP at dahil meron tayong fiscal program, bababa yung ating debt levels eventually to what we're targeted. So magiging less than 60% na yung ating level of debt, let's say 60% over 60% of GDP na siya by 2026 onwards. So and it can happen even before that, depende sa performance ng economy and of course revenue collections.
Okay. If you look at nominally, it looks big, no? Pero based on international standards, tinitingnan po natin na metric sa debt is yung debt to GDP ratio. And it has been going down, and with our fiscal consolidation, we will ensure that it will go down. Nung panahon po ng pandemic, tinaasan po ng IMF yung ratio na yan. Sabi nila kahit hanggang 70%, good metric yan. So hindi naman po tayo umabot sa ganon, but alam natin na tumaas because kailangan po natin pondohan yung mga nangyari nung pandemic dahil wala tayong masyadong revenue. So in the coming years, tumaas po siya, babayaran natin siya, but still, yung debt to GDP ratio natin, it's going down. We are now at 6.2%, and the next year 6.1%, no? 60.1%. So ang ideal niyan sa ating fiscal consolidation is bring it down to 59% of debt to GDP ratio. 59 or 50?
Okay.
59.
Isa na lang po ako. Based on the latest projection of the BSP, ang inflation po for July ay nasa 4 to 4.8%. Depending on the actual number, it has the potential to be the highest in the last 9 months. How is the budget going to be responsive to our efforts to curb inflation?
Part naman po ng budget call at saka sa preparations ng mga budget ng mga ahensya, yung tinatawag na mga contingencies like allowance for inflation. So at makikita natin dun sa submission ng executive sa legislative branch yung tinatawag na macro assumptions table A1 ng BESF. So nakalagay doon na ang inflation natin will be around still despite na merong pagtaas siguro depende sa sitwasyon, but on average we still look at 3 to 4% yung 2024 inflation average, tapos sa 2025 between 2 to 4% ang macro assumption. So it should still go down to the targeted levels na ang budget natin is already parang tinatawag na inflation proof. Na of course, meron tayong mga sectors ng society na hindi inflation proof because they are vulnerable. So meron tayong mga programa para dito.
Yes. Sorry, I think my question wasn't very clear. Ang gusto ko
Mga
sana
programa?
maitanong yung mga programa para ma-manage yung inflation at maramdaman ng mga tao dahil yun ho ang hinihingi nila na ma-manage ang presyo ng mga bilihin. What specific
ito po
interventions and projects are in the budget that will help toward that end? Thank you.
Ito po yung tinatawag natin na mga cash assistance at saka ayuda po, 'di ba? So tuloy din po magbibigay tayo sa National Expenditure Program 2025. May kabuuang budget po na 253.3 billion pesos po ang nakalaan para sa ayuda. Under the Department of Social Welfare and Development, meron pong 205.5 billion pesos. Bulk of which, 114.1 billion will go to 4Ps. Ang next po is yung social pension po na merong 49.8 billion po. Tumaas po to because nagkaroon tayo ng bagong batas. 80 years old, pataas meron na sila. Yung Centenarians Act. Meron din po dito yung protective services ng under the DSWD, 35.1 billion pesos. Meron din po yung Sustainable Livelihood Program. Yung mga nakagraduate sa 4Ps, we continue to provide them cash assistance para makapagsimula po sila ng kanilang mga negosyo. That's 4.4 billion pesos. At yung Philippine Food Stamp, walang gutom program with 1.8 billion pesos. Sa Department of Health, meron din po tayong 26 billion para sa MAIP, yung medical assistance. And meron din po tayong Cancer Assistance Fund na 1.250 billion pesos. Under the Department of Labor and Employment, yung tinatawag po nating tulong panghanap buhay sa ating disadvantaged workers or TUPAD program, we allocated 14.1 billion pesos. Sa Department of Transportation, itutuloy pa din po natin ang fuel subsidy to transport sector affected by rising of fuel prices, 2.5 billion pesos. And under the Department of Agriculture, may fuel assistance din po na 50 million for farmers and another 50 million for fisher folks. Yan po. Yung Pantawid Pamilya po natin, nadagdagan po to dahil sinama po natin yung unang 1,000 days. Yan, unang 1,000 na araw or unang 2 taon. Yun po.
Okay.
Kaya nag-increase siya.
Sorry. Eden Santos na 25.
Sir, good afternoon po. Under the proposed 2025 NEP, how much is the allocated budget for flood control program of the administration?
Flood. Yun. Ito yun. Okay. Ang total na flood control for next year is 305 billion. Hindi ko makita. Napakaliit. May malaki kayo. 0.5 po yung font namin. Cute, no? Hindi ko makita. Yan. NEP, 305, saan po galing yung 257? 305.1 billion pesos po. And that's divided among the following implementing agencies. Nawala, ma'am.
Opo, Secretary, kasi nga po naging problema po yung mga nakarang malawakang pagbaha. Ano po?
Blurred yung akin.
At sa mga oras na ito ay sasagawa ng investigation ng Senado kaugnay nung mga naging epekto po ng bagyong Karina. Ano-ano po yung mga...
Kung mabasa mo, okay.
She's going to...
Babasahin lang niya. Kung mabasa eh. Ikaw na magbasa.
Okay. For the breakdown will be at 302.987 billion for DPWH, and the others coming from MMDA.
Hindi, yung breakdown. DPWH.
Ang DPWH kasi broken down kasi yan into a regional breakdown. So mayroon tayong 302 for all of that. Yung 302.
Yeah, 305 po siya, di po ba?
Yeah.
Ngayon, yung 302 billion po,
DPWH.
mapupunta sa DPWH. And then, meron din pong mapupunta sa na 2.173 billion sa Metro Manila
MMDA.
Development Authority. Yun po. And then, merong maliit from OPAPRO. But these are for 10 million lang. Maliit lang. Oo. 2.173 billion. Opo.
Okay.
With this budget po, Secretary, are we expecting na yung pong mga malawakang pagbaha na naranasan natin sa mga nakalipas pong mga linggo, hindi na ganoon yung magiging epekto? With this big, malaking budget po ito.
I think mas maganda sagutin ni Secretary Manny Bonoan, but but at least ang importante po is we're investing on it. It's not a one-time project na kinabukasan po makikita natin yung result. I think medyo matagal po yung pag-construct ng mga ganyang klaseng mga proyekto po. And then meron din po silang, may presenta po sila during the cabinet meeting this week. Meron po silang master plan na pinakita sa atin. Hindi lang po kasi yan sa pag-ulan, di ba? Yung nanggagaling yan sa bundok. I think they already had a briefing also 2 days ago explaining yung mga priority projects na yan.
And the president wants a long-term, large-scale, comprehensive flood control project that involves also water management to harness the water when it's rainy season, so that when it's dry season, we have enough water.
For irrigation.
Okay, so let's move on. Last question, I believe, because we're running out of time. Sam Medanilia, Business Mirror, and this side of the room.
Good afternoon. For Ma'am Pangandaman, kanina po na-mention na target po na bumaba yung debt by 2026. will that depend kung mapapasa po yung mga revenue tax measures ng Marcos administration such as the single-use plastic, yung sa tax for digital transaction, and yung sa sugar tax? Will this depend, yung pagbababa, kailangan mapasa yung mga legislation eh?
Oo. Kasama po sa assumptions ng DOF po, yung mga legislations na yan, yung mga tax reform measures na yan.
So kung mapopostpone po yung passage ng mga legislation na yun, baka hindi natin ma-reach yung target.
Nag-usap na po kami, yung priority, kasama po siya sa common legislative agenda ng LEDAC. And I think sa House of Representatives po, marami po dito pasado na. So it's in the Senate. Nasa advanced stage na po ng legislative process yung mga tax reforms natin. And of course, Secretary Recto was then part of the Senate. I'm sure that he will push for these reforms.
Tapos ma'am, yung na-mention ni President yung pag-ban sa POGOS. So for yung 2025 budget ba natin, proposed budget, may maapektuhan ba na ng pagkawala ng revenue from POGOS?
Nako. I'll have to, hindi no? Hindi. Maliit lang. Siguro we'll ask. We'll ask DOF. Hindi ko alam kung kasama doon sa assumptions, but from what I heard, sa DOF, kung meron mang revenue loss, maliit lang daw po.
Tapos last question na lang po. Ma'am, yung na-mention rin po yung, di ba, yung postponement po ng Mandanas ruling dahil meron, ini-study pa rin ng DBM yung possible devolution. Kamusta na po yung update pagdating dun sa study na yun? At saka ma-implement na po ba yun by next year?
Nag-present na po, NEDA po ang gumawa ng study together with Asian Development Bank, no? Tama, ADB and NEDA. Tapos na po yung study na present na rin po sa ComDev. And then we are now finalized for submission to the Office of the President. And then we're just finalizing yung kung paano po yung transition to full devolution.
Pwede po kaya yung ma-implement next year or it will take some time pa?
I think it will take some time, no? May transition siya, 2028.
Thank you po. Salamat.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Any final message from Secretary before we close?
Okay. So I will just, first, I would like to thank the entire cabinet for helping us prepare this fiscal year national expenditure program for next year. And we are all ready to defend our budget in Congress, both in House of Representatives, in the Senate in the coming weeks. And sinabi rin po ng Pangulo na ginawa po namin to meticulously at walang tulog po namin to ginawa para po matugunan at maging responsive ang ating budget sa pangangailangan po ng ating taong bayan. So with that po, I hope you'll we're also promoting transparency in the national government. So I hope you'll be with us when we go to the Senate and Congress when we try to defend this budget. Thank you po.
Okay, on that note, thank you so much, Secretary Pangandaman and Undersecretaries Abuel, Toledo, Basilio, and Assistant Secretary Dela Vega. And thank you, Malacañang Press Corps. Thank you for your interest and for your dedication to this NEP. Have a good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. Late na ako.